I'm going to do the cube now. I'm going to try to do the cube slowly, and I'm going to try and do it thoroughly, and to go all through the different parts. Some of these parts, specifically the beginning, I don't do anymore when I meet customers. I can leap through frog through them, but maybe it's important for you who see it for the first time to understand exactly where we come from and why. I also want us all, when we do this presentation, to do it as similar as possible. The reason for that is that normally I want people to be free and do whatever they want and go out and blah. We have 12 companies growing with 200%. And it is incredibly important that we grow the same way. I said before that there's just one company, Icon Media Lab, and I want it to stay that way. 2 years from now, I want it to be exactly the same company in 45 countries. Maybe that we are focusing more on design in England or human resource, whatever, in Spain, and that we're technical science center in Finland. But I want it to be the basically same company. And if we don't control this by having the same processes over how we present what we do and how we work and build, we're going to have 12 or 45 different companies, and that's going to be uncontrollable, and we're not going to have the 30,000 krona stock price, which is the goal. So, when we started Icon Media Lab, we started out by saying, how do we think that the market is going to develop? And we made what we called Icon Media Lab Interactive Curve, or the Icon Media Lab Internet Curve. The words of what we're going to call this curve has to be set within the next couple of months. And that has to be trademarked, because this is usable stuff for us. So let's call it the Icon Media Lab Internet Curve. We said that from where we were in the spring of 1996, we said that it didn't matter what we were talking about regarding the internet. The development would be exponential regarding the amount of people that would hook up to the internet, installed intranets, cost of installing internet applications, or the amount of e-commerce. And we have been exactly accurate to the point of the growth that we've been seeing in the last couple of years. When we started also, there were already some companies that had internet applications, and there were companies out there on the market that was producing these for them. Basically, these companies came from two different industries. They came from the technical programming sector, with companies like EDS, Bahn, IBM Consultancy, VM Data, and I don't know the other types of companies that we can find in other countries. Capgemini. And we had the companies that came from the advertising industry that we now call creative, which would be the advertising agencies, the McCann, the Lowe, the Young and Rubicam, and whatever. And you would have, when they did their first home pages, guys saying with surfboards on the outside, and hundreds of years of brand management, or at least 30, 40 years of brand management for large corporations, were thrown in the waste paper baskets. The second, as the internet then slowly developed and companies were installing new and different sites for their corporations, they also went in and they changed this from being guys on surfboards to being twisting and burning logotypes. They couldn't continue to go to these guys because they didn't know anything of brand management or communication skills. They couldn't go to the advertising agencies because the advertising agencies couldn't supply an HTML homepage at this time. So the alternative was web companies that positioned themselves here. Fairly low communication skills, in some cases high design skills, fairly low technical skills. There were CD-ROM production companies and types like this. We started out then by saying to having, well, what type of relationship are we going to have to the internet? What is important about the internet, and what is the internet? And we said, well, definitely it's a communication vehicle. So we said it's about communication and creative. We then said, well, what are the differences between traditional communication? And so let's work with a very simplified communication model where you have the sender of information, the recipient of information, and the media in which this information should be sent. And we said in traditional marketing communication, there were three differences. It's a long time I did it this thorough, so I can't remember everything. There's three differences between traditional marketing communication and interactive marketing communication. One is that the recipient is active. An active recipient has totally different expectations on the communication process as such. If I read a morning newspaper while eating my cereals and there's a big advertising about Viagra, it doesn't really appeal to me because I'm not in a situation where I need Viagra, so I just go right through it. On the other hand, if I wake up desperately in the middle of the night and find that I would really need some Viagra, it makes me an active recipient searching for information. I want to have my solutions quickly. And I go up to the internet, I hook up to the internet, it takes time, I finally find the page, and if I can't buy and get it delivered immediately, it makes me pissed off. So I have totally different expectations being active than being passive. That was quite a good example. The next one is that you might need to have enormous amounts of information. Because if I'm an active recipient, you don't know what I want or who I am. If I'm going to make an advertising directed directly to a 13-year-old girl, I'd make an ad in a newspaper about ponies. But if I don't know who I'm diverting this information to, because I'm a passive sender of information and the recipient is active, it means I don't know who's coming in searching for information, which makes that I have to put so much information out there that I could make any potential searcher for information happy. So I need enormous amounts of information. And that also means that it is the recipient that is running the process. If I do the ad in the Pony, in the Pony magazine, I can then say exactly how I want to word and phrase and what pictures and colors to have, because I know a lot about the reader. But in this case, I don't do anything, and my information is basically dead there. At least it was in the beginning of 1996, where people could go into the database and it's on their terms. So it's the recipient that runs the process. And apart from that, by interactive communication over the internet, you're not limited by time, you're not limited by room, and you have much bigger possibilities of creating relationships. So we went back and said, where do we want to position ourselves here? We said, this is not enough. This is simply not enough, because in order to truly work with these problems that interactive communication is creating for ourselves, we needed strategists, behavioral management consultants that would understand the implications that this type of communication would have upon the organizations, that would be able to understand the logistic problems, organizational problems, that would be able to integrate the systems into the processes to truly affect the processes, not just from a technical aspect. We needed analysis statisticians and researchers who would monitor the consumption over time and be able, as consumption and consumption patterns and viewer patterns would change over time. Down here, it was no problem that the things were really, really technical, because 95% of the people that were using the internet were civilekonomer, engineers, all understanding this. But when my mother comes out and starts using the internet, it has to have a totally different interface and usability issues in order to really understand these things. We needed human-computer interaction also to focus on these changes of making it easy to understand and to really improve the value creation that was on the site. And we needed media competence for compelling content in order to really entertain and create long-term relationships. And we summarize this either calling it strategic or human aspects of what the internet is. And we position ICA Media Lab from day one, and this is important. From day one, we position ICA Media Lab up here. And we were the first company in the world to realize that there was a need for combining strategic, technology, and creative. There were some companies that were trying to get from here and up towards here, but there was nobody understanding the importance of the strategic issues here, because nobody thought the internet was going to become anything. And as the internet then developed, and organizations went through their first, their second, their third, their fourth, their fifth, their sixth, and eventually they're going to do their seventh homepage, they also understood that they would have to have different types of needs as they grew up this learning curve. The problems Media Lab had in the beginning was that the buyers of our consultancy just had no notion of the importance that this would have, the impact that these new technologies would have in the future. And many of them either came from the advertising side and just wanted cool stuff and campaigns, or otherwise they were technical and they would focus on that. They didn't understand that this is something more profound that will actually totally change the way that we look upon the industries, any given industry in the future. And if we would like to see how the market looked at that time and how it still is in a way looking, you would have the American West Coast here, where they would really love to talk about dynamic HTML and new Java applets or push technologies, because it's very technical driven, as everything in the West Coast of America is. You would have this as the East Coast, where you have the American Onlines and you have the Racerfish that would talk about design, creative, cool games and content. And this is very, very much about Scandinavia. If there's anything that's called Scandinavian design, and I think this is a world-known begrepp, world-known epithet, term for, I think everybody understands what Scandinavian design is. And Scandinavian design stands for simplicity, usability, and functionality. Simplicity, usability, and functionality, and it has never been as important as with the internet. So by focusing on these things, we actually create true value to our customers. And even more importantly, we create more value to our customers' customers, and even in some cases our customers' customers' customers. And I'll get back to this further on. So when the organizations then built their, let me see, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth site, let's do it like this. First, second, because I know how much I'm going to need. We can even plot out and see how these were done. They were done here, 1, 2, they were slightly smarter, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you can see how this has gone basically like this. And it's going closer and closer to us all the time. And today, everybody is trying to become a competitor. These guys have now matured and are getting bigger and better and getting in here. The advertising agencies are our partners rather than competitors in many cases, so that's not a problem. The technical consultants are trying to get in here, or even trying to get in here, but they're having problems both understanding why they need it, because they're not smart enough. 2, they have problems because they can't recruit these people because they would never want to work in those atmospheres. 3, they don't understand the values that these people would actually create, so they wouldn't be able to build the organizations of truly deriving the value that these different groups would create. You also have the Anderson Consulting, the McKinseys, and all these types of management consultants that also now have the wish to come into our area. We are the best company in the world in this field. We are the best positioned company in the world in this field. We have been thinking about this longer than anybody else, which makes us much better than anybody else. Anderson Consulting is now going out there and saying, yeah, well, they don't know anything about strategic. Or, yeah, but we have 55,000 people. 1.5 years ago, they had nobody. And they're not going to build the competence that we've created over a 3-year period in a couple of months. We have competitors. We have, I think, Razorfish is probably getting up here somewhere. You have Sapient, which I think is a great company. You have Scient or Viant. And there is more and more companies coming closer and closer to us, but we're still the best. We're still the best in the world, and you have to believe this. If we look at our competition, we have the technical consultancies. The technical consultancies are, as I said, looking at everything from a technical aspect. And I'll go back to this further on. There is no value in the technology as such. There is, I'll repeat this 5 times. There is no value in the technology as such. There is no value in the technology as such. There is no value in the technology as such. And there is no value in the technology as such. And there is no value in the technology as such. The value is from the perceived value of the users, of the value added, of the service, and whatever you can get out of it, not from the technology as such. Then you have the management consultants. Management consultants build their whole business idea upon creating intellectual capital that is reusable, just the way that we want to do, with the big exception that what they do is they take a hell of a lot of money to tell companies what they already are doing, what they are, and then they take this and they redo it for similar companies in the same industry. Basically creating commodities out of any given industry and decreasing the differentiation between organizations rather than increasing the differentiation, which is essential. They are basically researchers and analysis that do nice business reports. Our management consultants are much more creative and dynamic. We reinvent. We look upon the world and the new futures and the changes in the world, and we reinvent ourselves and our customers every day to make them understand the abilities to adapt to the new technologies and the change that's happening in the world. And then we have the advertising agencies, the creative companies. Well, the advertising is not anymore our competitors. They are our partners. And as I said, we are a part of the overall communication strategy. Thus, we have to work together with the advertising partners. And then we have the media houses, the publishing houses who in the beginning said to be our competitors, but today are also our partners because they're contributing with content in order to create relationships for our customers. And then we put in our human-computer interaction, HCI, the facilities to actually create user-friendly and value-adding interfaces. And we have the analysis, statistics, and research, which we have to monitor the change of consumption over the time to improve and grow with our customers' customers. And let's then change this from a competitive aspect to a production aspect. And if you fold this together, you get the cube. And the cube is what Icon Media Lab is all about. The reason why the cube is so important is that this is how we work, how we recruit, what quality we supply to our customers. It is everything we stand for. It's understanding the change of the internet. And this is more than anything about team building. And team building is incredibly important. And this is also something that Scandinavians historically have been very good at. We have lousy football players in Sweden. Still, we played 0-0 against England on Wembley. And we even beat them in Sweden. And we came in 3rd in the World Championships a couple of years ago. Because it's about team building. But by integrating and working together and helping each other out, we become a hell of a lot better than any competition that's specializing. Why? Because the interaction, the information that these people give to each other improves their overall qualities, are stimulating and inspiring to all the other people. The boring technicians and programmers who don't want to look people in the eye and just want to sit and hacking away emails. The even more boring and besserwisser and up-nose management consultants in their Armani suits with their good education programs. The suicidal behavioral scientists. The hysterical, black-dressed art directors who throw themselves like Liv Ullmann from wall to wall in the creative process. And all these very, very different characters, beautiful in their own knowledge, individuals with integrity, deserving all the respect there is in the world, when they sit down together for the first time and interact with each other, talk to each other and help each other out, that is when we create true value. That is when we really rise ourselves to new levels, because our life gets broader and we do better things. Our technical people are more creative than any other technicals. Our management consultants are more dynamic than anybody else. Our designers have a better understanding for human-computer interaction and technology than anybody else, because of the interaction and what we give within the team. That is what Icon Media Lab is all about. Respect for individuals, respect for the individual competencies, the working together, being unprestigious and helping each other out, creating fantastic teams. And I firmly believe in this, that this is what makes us the best in the world. So what are we going to be the best in the world at? We constantly have these discussions whether we're going to be best at retail or whether we're going to be best on technology as such or project leading. But what Icon Media Lab is going to be best at is, let's see what color. We're going to be best at getting the people into the site. We're going to be best at having the people surf around for a long time within the sites. We're going to be, I'm just going to take this out. We're going to be best at adding value stars, so that people within the sites really understand, truly understand, and find and use the value creation that is within the sites. Have I forgotten anything? We are going to be best in understanding for our organizations. This is a factory. How the factory can apply its different strategies on the internet as such. And we're going to, there's something I forgot. We get in, we surf around, we find the value, we create the relationship. We're going to be best in creating the relationship. So this is actually the customer's customer that we are more interested in than the customer as such. This is the customer as such. And if we then put it on, this is communication knowledge, and this is human-computer interaction knowledge, this is strategy and creative management consulting, this is obviously technology also, and this is technology, and this is a lot of analysis, statistics, and research, and communication, and management, dynamic management consultant. This is another way of presenting the cube of what we do and why and how we do it. You've never seen this before. And this is what we are going to be good at. This is what we will respect. We can never go out to a company and say, we know your industry better than you do. How the hell should we be able to do that? But we know the internet better than anybody else. And that's what we're going to focus on when we sell. Actually, I think that this is end of part 1 within the cube. This is the actual cube. The next is going to be focusing on the curve. The internet developing curve. The first site that companies did was basically giving out information. I have forgotten one thing. The buzzwords for the future. There are 4 buzzwords for the future within the internet. And that is brand. Many people think that brands are dead. We don't think so. There's 2 is the value added. The value added that we create for our customers. 3, relationship. Which is based upon the value added and the brand. And 4, the interfaces. So, the first site that was done was information. It was one-way communication between the corporation and the customer. The second one was communication. And with frequently asked questions and email facilities, you now could have two-way communication between the consumer and the corporation. The third was transaction. And transaction was adding financial tools to be able to pay for whatever type of transactions that was done over the internet. This is what most of the companies call e-commerce, and which is basically where most of the companies are today. And most of the companies that are looking upon this do it from a technical point of view. Just going to let them settle down. Hi, Denmark. From a technical point of view, doing e-commerce on this level basically means having software, hardware, and a database. So if people want to go in and buy a computer, they can go in and they can buy the computer and they go out and everybody's really happy. That might very well be e-commerce, but it's not the type of e-commerce that ICO Media Lab works with. Because what we try to do is add value both to the consumer and to the corporation, our customer, in terms of having more sales overall. Of making sure that if somebody goes in to buy a computer, when they leave the site, they've also bought a flat screen, 5 different software programs. They come back the next week to buy for the same products for their husband as well, and they keep that relationship for the coming 45 years. That is e-commerce, and that is what we do. We do not have a technical aspect and relationship to what we do for our customers, because why? There is no actual value in the technology as such, only as a support vehicle for creating the rest, the true value added and value creation. Now, it's not that I'm being bad towards the programmers and technicians, because remember what I said? What created a true raise of valuation in what type of products that we could take on in Sweden was done by focusing on getting in technical competence and putting it to new technical levels, working much more with technical consultants, which is very important. So when I say there is no value in technology as such, I could just as well say that there is no value in the creative as such. The true value is in the combination of the cube, of working with the value add and the value creation aspect of any type of relationship between us and our customers. Just going to redo the cube a bit here slightly. But I think, however, that it is important to focus on that again and again, because many of our big competitors come from here and they're not doing a good job, not as good as we are doing. So the next thing that the companies got was integration. And integration, again, from the technical point of view, is just integrating in to the corporate business processes, integrating into the existing bonds and SAPs and databases and whatever, so that you now could access more technology. But for us, integrating is something much more than that. Integrating for us is integrating and compromising the organization that we work with. Because in an interaction between a consumer using the web interface to do something, you have a point of sale situation. And to maximize the potential in any given point of sale situation, we have to compromise and coordinate and integrate the whole organization as such, taking different brands and product lines and product categories within an organization and focusing on being able to create an interaction with the person that's in there. By the thing that I pointed out before, they should stay longer within the sites, truly find the values that are created for them in the sites. So integration for us is also compromising and integrating the organizations, which is in a way is interfacing. To interface how you actually find between different departments within an organization. Even interfacing like we do with the cube, having programmers working with technicians and creators. we have, for our customers, we have to create the interfacing between their sales department, their logistics department, and their own management department. That is interfacing. The next thing is participation. Participation for us, we've picked from a management consultant called Richard Norman. Richard Norman is a Swedish management consultant that is internationally very known. And he developed a module that shows the development of the industrialized nations from the industrialization's beginning, where you have the corporations and the consumers, and where the corporations in the beginning of time were producers, and the consumers were the receivers. And you could have a car in any color you wanted as long as it was black. In 1950, we came into the next phase of the industrialization, where we came into customization, and where the corporations tried to create a relationship with the consumer. And the consumer became a source of information and inspiration. And Procter & Gamble created soap operas. And basically what they did was they said that we sell shampoo, soap, and detergent to women. And women have nothing to do. They go at home all day taking care of their kids. This was in the 50s, all right? So during daytime, we will do lousy television programs that they will sit and look at all day. And in the commercial breaks in between, we'll sell our shampoos and detergent to them. Well, in 1994, we came into the new era. Some people outside Icomedia Lab call this the network society, the information society, intellectual capital society, blah, 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 blah. We call it the value-adding society. And corporations became organizers of the value-added process. And consumers became co-producers. And again, Procter & Gamble created a database called Parenthood or ParentPod, where parents could go into the database and not only detract any type of information they needed, but also submit information that they had. It could be recipes for children that were allergic to milk, or ideas about how to prevent your kids from crying at 4 o'clock in the morning. I wish I knew. And a lot of other things. So the actual consumer is adding value to other consumers. Meanwhile, Procter & Gamble is selling their products through the banner ads on their own site. Can anybody think of a company, now most of you have seen this, so if you've seen me do it before, don't say anything. Can any of the other of you, the new companies within the group, think of a Swedish company that pre-1994 used the consumer as a co-producer? Good. IKEA. There is no value in the chair before you can sit in it. And the consumer is the one putting the chair together, thus acting as a co-producer. Not necessarily creating value to other people, but at least they are part of the consumer. Now the interesting thing about this is that when we have this situation, we also go closer and closer to one-to-one marketing. And since we are working with the internet, we're actually talking about real-time one-to-one marketing. This is all very good, but one-to-one marketing is extremely expensive. It's extremely expensive, but very rewarding if you manage to create the value added so that you have long-term relationships. Volvo pays about $10,000 in marketing to sell their first Volvo to a person, but only $1,000 to spend to sell their second Volvo to the same person. So once they lost the customer, or to regain or to gain a customer, the costs are enormous. So in order to be able to do this, to get the one-to-one relationship and to be able to attain it, you have to create a lot of value added, and you have to be smart about doing this. The problems, however, as companies go through this phase of development, and what was I going to say, is that as more and more companies do the same thing, you're going to have increased competition. With increased competition, you're going to have diminishing margins. And with the diminishing margins, you're going to have other problems. Let's go back to why you're going to have increased competition. Let's look at SE-Banken, which is a bank that we have put on the internet, created an online accounting for them. We've gone through the whole process. We're integrating into the systems where they can do their, pay their bills, or where they can do transactions, and where they can do all these different types of banking. They're also participating in creating the value for other people through giving advice about what stock to buy. And they're also giving a lot of information, doing a lot of the participation by they're actually doing these transactions themselves. Now this is all good, but in the old world, the banks built their barriers of entry through their enormous banking network, through their thousands of employees who could give the service, who had knew the faces of the people and such. But as they're now putting more and more people onto the internet, they're actually sacking a lot of their people, selling out their office space, and what are they doing then? They're tearing down the barriers of entry. So what happens when barriers of entry gets torn down? There are excess margins in the industry which creates increasing competition. With increasing competition, you get diminishing margins. With diminishing margins, you get pissed off stockholders. When you have pissed off stockholders, either the CEO for the company tries to divert his organization into making higher volumes or increasing margins in another way by giving new products and product lines out there, or he gets fired. And that is exactly what happened with Ecker Pfeiffer at Compaq Computers. He got fired. He was not taking this in accounting, and Dell Computers, using all this, having the people as co-producers, putting together the computer exactly as they wanted, customizing it for themselves by using one-to-one marketing, increasing efficiency by integrating into the systems all the way out to subcomponent suppliers. There was an enormous increase of competition in the industry. Margins were pressed down on Compaq Computer. He didn't manage to raise the volume, so he got fired. This is going to happen to thousands of CEOs around the world within the next 2-3 years. And what does that mean? The CEOs that does not want to get fired are going to get shitless scared for being fired. And what are they going to do? To prevent to be fired because they haven't developed a smart enough internet strategy, they are going to throw billions of dollars into the internet industry in order to make sure that we are going to be there. I'm not going to lose my job. And who's going to take care of that money? Yeah. And as billions of dollars are being put into this industry, there's going to be far too few companies that are going to be able to support it. There's going to be very, very few companies out there that can take in these large accounts. If you look at it, we have 40 people on SAS, 30 people on Let's Buy It, 30 people on Svenska Spel. There is no other company in Sweden that can even take on that type of projects. And that is pathetic little Sweden with less people than Milan and Rome has together. So we have to grow and grow quickly, and we can do this by using our network, our intellectual capital, recruit people, take higher margins and a higher cost to our customers, and leveraging upon the fact that there's going to be shit-scared CEOs out there who don't want to lose their job. I have 50 minutes. I'm almost there. And this is the old world. This is Michael E. Porter's value chain. Michael E. Porter is a very famous management consulting from Harvard University. And this is the traditional Andersen Consulting and McKinsey's of the world. The same companies that during 1980 said that you become conglomerates, they told all the big corporations, buy anything that moves. Volvo went out and bought the most ugly food, disgusting food in the world, Abba's fish balls. And they also bought Pharmacia, pharmaceuticals. And when the finance industry went to hell in the end of the 80s, and this had turned out to be a really bad concept, they started selling these things off. And Andersen Consulting and McKinsey, who had been doing the advising, then went home and licked their wounds and came back after the financial crisis in the beginning of the 90s and said, Eureka, we have found it. Outsource everything that's not your core business and focus on what's your core business. So now corporations should just do what they're good at. But that's bullshit. They're wrong again. Because every day in the future, companies will have to reinvent themselves and say, and look upon themselves in a new aspect and saying, we cannot do just our core business, because with the increase of competition, the diminishing margins, we have to reinvent ourselves every day. We have to find new ways of creating value to our consumers, and we have to find new ways of increasing volumes. We have to become bigger. We have to buy companies within our industry to get the higher volumes rather than the diminishing margins. And that type of looking upon the industry is changing every organization there is. There's 6 ways of doing this, according to Icon Media Lab. One is startup. Startups can be done if you have excess capacity, excess knowledge, customer base to work upon, or quantity and guidance. There's 4 C's. I can't remember which 4s they are, so I just say a lot of C words. Examples of this is Microsoft. Microsoft today is the 2nd largest car sales company in the world. They are also the largest travel portal in the world with Expedia.com. And they're using their knowledge, their capabilities, their money, and they're just doing it in new industries to increase volumes and revenue streams, creating more value for their customers, building stronger relationships with more value adder in order to strengthen the relationship. And they're doing it by making smart interfaces, using the internet as an interface. The second one is mergers and acquisitions. You can't open the newspapers without mergers and acquisitions in your face every day. Telecommunications buying into datacom companies. Car companies buying each other in order to get higher volume and better relationship to your company, to your customers, and blah, 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 blah. Then you have 3 Co's. Cooperation. And cooperation being companies working together with each other, hand in hand, creating value. And in order to, the value creates the stronger relationship, which builds the brand, and you do it through different type of interfaces. Perfect example is McDonald's and Disney World. Not at all competing, exactly the same target group, families. So McDonald's gives away small Disney figures in their Happy Meal packages, which results in more sold hamburgers and more people to the movies. It's a win-win-win situation because the families get happier children and they get somewhere to go. So who's the lose in this situation? What? Burger King. Companies without the relationships of creating value added. Then there is co-opetition, which is combining the words competition and cooperation. And that could be companies like Razorfish and Icon Media Lab, who has grown the total market in Sweden through the competition between us, and who has grown each of ours market share within that industry. By fighting so hard against each other, both companies that fight get a larger part of the market share, or even expands the total market. So you have to find a really good competitor in all your countries to fight against. And always refer to them as the second best in the market. Make sure they do the same thing, and then everybody else will be third-grade companies. This is beautiful. It works. The third one is co-branding. And co-branding in the old world have been co-branded credit cards. In the future, it's going to be much more sophisticated, because if we look at SE-Banken, they have all their information in big databases. They have online connection to Bob, who sits at home and does his stuff. They have a firewall, and for him to understand the ones and zeros, you put on a graphical interface, a web page, so that he can do the transactions of this. I'll be going over with 5 minutes, I think. What they can do here is they can cut this off and they can put on a Volvo interface. Now, Bob thinks that he has a Volvo bank, or he knows that's a Volvo SE-Banken bank, which gives him much better customer service, because we know a lot about the Volvo owner. He's a villa owner, he has stock, he's probably aged, blah, blah, blah. And so we can customize through the one-to-one marketing, a site that's better suited for him. SE-Banken gets higher volume and decreased marketing costs. Volvo gets increased relationship and also better planning for their production, because they have an account which is saved to your next Volvo car, where Bob has 1% better interest rate than in the bank. So it's a win-win-win situation. Who's lose? The others. Companies without the brand or without the cooperation facilities, without the value adding creating the relationship. The sixth one is virtual companies, which could be companies just like this, but you don't need to know that it's SE-Banken. It's just some company that has an intellectual capital that they co-brand out in order to just get high volumes and very low ticks upon this, which is going to be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So again, this means that we're actually in a totally new position. Because with this as a concept of how to diversify out and become, in a way, a conglomerate, the difference between the old world and the new world is that it has to make sense. And that is, again, trying to achieve these things, creating value stars, where you have the corporation in the center, where you have consumers that are adding value, not only participating as a co-producer, but adding value to other consumers. You also have competitors that might add value to each other through the interaction. You have partners, you have alliances, you have subcomponent suppliers, and financial organizations, all being part of the value star. This is incredibly, incredibly, incredibly important, because, again, the interfaces that we said before was interfacing personnel and interfacing branches or divisions within the organizations, interfacing perceived values with the web interface. But here it's also going to be interfacing the value star. This is one interface, here are others within that, and here is a third. Understanding how the value that's going to be created within the value star is perceived all the way out to the consumers or between the consumers. These value stars are all hooked up to each other. So here we have another one, C, P, blah, 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 blah. And this is what we have to be smart at and understand how we can create this for our consumers, because this is changing the world. We had a discussion the other day regarding Ericsson. Ericsson's always said, well, we're not really interested in the cellular phone business because we don't really sell to the end consumer. We're not in the consumer industry. We're just selling to big telecom operators. That is bullshit. Because if this is Ericsson, and they actually sell to a telecom operator who lives his life by selling to consumers, who's part of other value stars. If Ericsson cannot support value through its services all the way to the consumer, Ericsson is going to be dead in the future. Because why? There is no value in the technology as such. There is no value in the technology as such. And Ericsson has the best telecommunication systems in the world. They have the best telephones in the world. Nobody gives a fuck. I don't know anybody who uses more than 5% of the total potential within a cellular phone. I don't know anybody who knows or cares about what hardware it is that supports the telecom groups. And this is incredibly important, because Ericsson and all other companies are going to have to start looking not just at their customers, but at their customers' customers, adding value all the way through, creating relationships through the value added created, which is going to be either their existence or disappearance from the industry in the long-term future. This is what we always have to look at for our customers. What value stars should they be part of? How do we create these? And how good will we be in creating the interfaces between our customers and their customers and all potential partners? we also have to start, and you all have to start looking at what value stars that Icon Media Lab part of. Well, maybe this is Oracle. How does Oracle create value for our consumers? Well, it's the best company for certain products that will make it easier for end consumers to some of our customers to add blah, 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 blah. And how can we have Vingreser give value to SAS? Our consumers adding value to other consumers. Well, I know Helene Lidstrand in Sweden is now planning conferences where we have purchasers within different industries interacting with each other to share experiences so that they can learn from that. We need to work with partners, alliances, financial institutions, and we have to thrive upon this. Because can we create these value stars where consumers perceive the value created within them? We can create the interfaces between these organizations and companies. There is no price to the value that we create for them. When you talk about sites we've done, don't ever talk about cool design or this is really a nice Java applet or the integration into this database was done with ASP400, blah, 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 blah. Talk about the values created for the organization. Vingreser sold for 10–15% of the total sales the first year they started doing sales over the internet. More importantly, they sold their most expensive trips and travels. Even more importantly, they sold much more add-ons, like insurance packages or excursions, whereas where they really make the money, where they have the higher margins, than they even do in the shops. They have created stronger relationships. They're the only travel company in the world who has the largest travel sites in their country. Volkswagen had not lost one single retailer to our Autobytel, or not one single retailer that has left Volkswagen periodically. This is of enormous value to Volkswagen. They're also selling more expensive cars with much more add-ons and features on it, which is very interesting since they now can cut costs, both them and the retailers, through having the sales done over the internet online. Again, win-win-win situation. Help the retailers find way to add more service and value to the consumer to actually defend and motivate their existence. Because otherwise, if they don't, companies like Let's Buy It is going to just thrash the middlemen. But what they have to do is refine their industry. If they go out and say, well, we're just middlemen and we're going to focus on a business idea, core concept, and outsource everything else, well, there is nothing there to outsource. They're dead. They have to be part of value stars, adding value to consumers to create relationships. And this is what Icon has to be the best at. And I know that we are the best at it. And this is what you as salespeople should sell. Not what your companies want you to sell, not what you find easy to sell, but this is what you should sell. And when you've sold it, the MDs and the other companies and the project leaders have to find the people and the ways to support and create these values. And the knowledge management vehicles have to spread this information and knowledge around the world so that every company can leverage upon it. And the most important thing we have is the international accounts. Thank you.